Supervisor of Elections Elvin Bailey said the actions by the Governor-General to recommend election workers other than his recommendations was done legally and suggested this did not undermine his office. Much was made of the revelation that Mr. Bailey's recommendation for election day workers in the various polling divisions was not accepted, but rather replaced with recommendations by the Governor-General. Mr. Bailey, speaking on Freedom Radio Issues program this week, said some of his recommendations were accepted by the Governor-General and some were replaced.
The Governor-General may accept the recommendation of the Supervisor of Elections as to who the returning officers ought to be. He may or he may not. He took some, he didn't take some. My names were recommendations. At the best of times, they were recommendations. Recommendations may be taken, may not be taken. The Governor-General, in his own wisdom, did what he needed to do, consistent with the dictates of the law. The fact that there were, quote-unquote, new returning officers did not affect the process, because I worked with them, did the training, accelerated the training, got them to a state of readiness, gave them their manuals to read, and they applied themselves. So that issue, as far as I'm concerned, is a non-point.
The opposition member of the Electoral Commission, Attorney Jason Hamilton, in a Win FM interview during the elections, suggested that this development undermined the independence of the electoral office and was meddling from the executive.
The Constitution specifically states that the only person who can, or the only authority that can direct the Supervisor of Elections is the Commission. However, we have a situation where, for example, the Supervisor of Elections would have prepared a list of persons to be returning officers. He would have vetted the persons, he would have interviewed the persons, he would have had training sessions with the persons. That list disappeared. Disappeared in the sense that none of the persons who were selected, and that list was voted on by the Commission, and then a new list is presented with returning officers, none of whom were selected by the supervisor. The Constitution, the National Assembly's Elections Act specifically says that the Governor-General appoints on the advice of the Supervisor of Elections. So unless the supervisor is going to say that he recommended a set of persons that he's never spoken with, never interviewed in the process, then it means some other level or arm or administrative body is directing the Supervisor of Elections.
But Attorney General Vincent Byron, the minister responsible for elections, dismissed Mr. Hamilton's suggestion of unfairness on the part of the supervisor.
That's nonsense. It's spurious. I think this has been one of the elections that was very fair. I think the people were very satisfied, except for some long waits in the line to vote. That was one, and the question of the counting. But in terms of the conduct of the commission, of the work of the supervisor, of the office of the supervisor, as well as the commission, he has been very open, very transparent. He has come to the public regularly. He has alerted them to what he's doing. And I think that any such allegation is far-fetched.
The supervisor, while speaking of independence of his office, insisted that his office should still be funded by the government and that such entities will not always be independent. We did have members of the commission, Electoral Commission, who prior about 2 or 3 days before the election alleged publicly in the media that they believe the electoral office is being interfered with by the executive.
Interesting. Very interesting.
You don't think so?
Well, let me put it this way. And I'll tell you what I told another reporter at the NGO thing. I'm an independent thinker. I'm an independent thinker in a public office. I don't know what is media definition of independence of a structure that is part of the governance and government system. So really and truly, I don't know what to tell you or the others in terms of that. As I said before, I don't have a budget. I depend on the interventions and so on of the government. And I don't know what else to say in relation to that, except no laws were broken.
Let me ask it this way then. Do you think then that the current structure that exists, as you just rightfully pointed out, that the electoral office is under
the support of the government, do you think a more independent, quote unquote, structure should be set up then, where the funding and everything else that supports the office is not necessarily from the executive?
The funding has to come from government. Must. Where it goes, how it is managed, we could debate. But I have been involved in elections observations in different countries. I have been involved in training in different areas, and I don't know that there is any one body that is, quote unquote, using your term, independent. Do you?
I guess that's debatable.
Okay.
Andre Huey, SKN Newsline.